The moment she walked into the cafe, my chest tightened like someone had quietly set a weight down inside me. I had come expecting a stranger, someone safe, someone I could forget by the time the coffee cooled. Instead, I saw a face I recognized before my mind could catch up. My name is Ben. I'm 26, and I work construction outside Boulder. My days are loud, saws whining, steel clanging, men shouting measurements over wind and engines. My nights are the opposite. I come home to a small apartment where the walls don't say much back. Dinner is whatever is fast. Sleep comes early because mornings always come sooner than I want. There's a kind of loneliness that lives in routines like that, not sharp, just steady. It shows up when you sit on the couch and realize you haven't spoken out loud in hours. A year ago, I got out of a relationship that started back in college. I thought it would last. Then it didn't. There were words said that stuck around longer than the love did. After that, I closed the door on dating. No apps, no setups, no maybes. So when Emma from work started nudging me about a blind date, I should have said no and meant it. Emma's new, loud laugh, big energy, the kind of person who treats everyone like they're already friends. She caught me at the end of a long day and smiled like she knew something I didn't. Worst case, she said, it's just coffee and a story. I didn't want the story, but that night my apartment felt too quiet. So I agreed with one condition. No tricks. Sunday evening, Pearl Street, a cafe that smelled like warm bread and old wood, soft music, yellow light, the kind of place where time slows whether you want it to or not. I sat by the window with a black coffee and told myself this would be quick, in and out. No feelings. Every time the door chimed, my stomach jumped. Part of me hoped no one would show. Then the bell rang again. She walked in calmly like she belonged there. Late 30s, long brown hair, a simple sweater, nothing loud, nothing trying too hard. She looked around the room, and when her eyes found mine, we both stopped moving.
Lena.
I hadn't seen her in years. Not since Mark's wedding, not since the cookouts and group dinners before everything fell apart and nobody talked about it anymore. Mark had been my best friend once. We'd shared cheap beer and big plans. Then life went different directions. She stood there, surprised but steady. Didn't turn around. Didn't leave. Ben, she said softly. I laughed because it was easier than thinking. Yeah, small world. She sat across from me, careful, like she was choosing this one moment at a time. So, she said after a breath, you're the date. I guess I am. The room felt quieter after that. Not empty. Just waiting. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, the table between us like a line neither of us knew how to cross. I kept thinking she might stand up at any moment and say this was a mistake. I wouldn't have blamed her. My coworker set me up too, Lena finally said. She told me it was someone kind, someone steady. I nodded. Emma had used the same words. It felt like the universe was laughing quietly at both of us. If you want to leave, I said, I get it, really. She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes weren't angry. They weren't cold either. They looked tired but clear. I thought about it the second I saw you, she said. But I'm here, you're here. We can at least finish the coffee. Something in my chest loosened at that, just a little. We ordered. Another black coffee for me. A latte for her. The first minutes were careful. We talked around the edges of things. Work, weather, Boulder traffic, safe ground. I told her about the school project I was on and how everything was running behind. She asked questions that made me feel like she was actually listening. She told me about her job at the university library, about helping students who didn't know where to start, about staying late sometimes because she remembered what it felt like to be lost. The woman across from me wasn't the quiet background figure I remembered from years ago. She had a dry sense of humor. It slipped in softly, then stayed. I caught myself leaning forward without realizing it. At some point, she stirred her drink and looked at me over the rim of her cup. Life's funny, she said. You think you're done with surprises, then it does something like this. I almost didn't come, I admitted. Me neither, she said. And this time her smile was warm. Real. The cafe lights dimmed as closing time crept closer. Outside, the street had gone quiet. I realized I didn't want the night to end, and that scared me more than the situation ever had. When we stood to leave, Lena hesitated near the door. She tucked her hair behind her ear and took a breath. This is strange, she said softly. Yeah, but it's not bad strange. I nodded, and for the first time that evening, I let myself feel it. We stood there a second longer than necessary. The door opened behind us, cool air slipping in. Lena shifted her weight, like she was deciding whether to say something or let the moment pass. Then she looked up at me. "Do you want to keep dating?" she asked. The question was quiet. No pressure in it. No drama. But it landed hard. Keep dating. Like what we'd just done already mattered enough to continue. For a moment, my mind filled with warnings. Mark's name, old loyalty. Late nights back in college when we promised we'd always have each other's backs. All the reasons this could turn messy. But there was another truth sitting there too. The truth that something in me had woken up across that small cafe table. Something I'd been keeping locked away. "I do," I said, my voice came out rough. "I want to keep seeing you." Lena's shoulders dropped, like she'd been bracing herself. Her smile was small, but it held. "Okay," she said. "Good." We stepped outside under the streetlights. The air smelled like rain and coffee. The mountains were just dark shapes in the distance, steady and quiet. "I need to be honest," I said. "Mark and I aren't close like we used to be, but he was my best friend once. This could get complicated." "I know," she said. "I've thought about it. I don't want to put you in a bad place. But I also don't want to run from something good just because it's hard." That word good settled deep in my chest. Because the night had been good. Easy. I'd forgotten what easy felt like. Before we parted, she asked if we could do something normal next time. A walk, lunch, something without surprises. I laughed, relieved. Sunday morning, the park. When I got home, my apartment felt quieter than usual. Not empty, just aware. Like it knew something had changed. Emma texted me right away. "So, how did it go?" I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Finally, I typed back, "You set me up with Lena." There was a pause, then 3 dots, then nothing, then, "Wait, Lena who?" I called her. She swore she hadn't known, said it was a coincidence. I wanted to be angry, but it didn't feel planned, just messy. "Be careful," she said softly before hanging up. That word followed me all week. Sunday morning came faster than I expected. The sky was clear, the kind of blue that only shows up after a cold night. The air had that spring bite that makes your lungs feel clean when you breathe in. The park was already busy when I pulled in. Families, dogs, hikers heading for the trails. I spotted Lena near the path, hands tucked into her jacket pockets. Jeans, sneakers, hair pulled back loose. She looked comfortable, like she wasn't trying to be anything else. "You came," she said, smiling. "I told you I would," I said, and I meant it. We started walking, the trail opening out into wide fields with the flatirons rising ahead of us. Wildflowers dotted the grass. The wind carried the smell of pine. At first, we kept a careful distance. Hands to ourselves. Like we were still learning where the lines were. But the conversation came easily. Easier than I expected. She asked about my work. I told her about the school gym roof running behind schedule, about the foreman's stress. She listened like it mattered, like my small world wasn't small to her. When she talked about her job, her face lit up. She told me about students who came in late, panicked about papers they didn't understand, about staying late to help because she remembered what it felt like to feel lost. "That's kind," I said. She shrugged. No one was kind to me when I was lost. We walked in silence for a bit after that. Not awkward, just thoughtful. At the lookout, we sat on a bench facing the valley. Sunlight warmed the grass below. Lena's voice got quieter. "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "Are you worried I'm going to hurt you?" I took a breath. "I'm worried about a lot of things, but when I'm with you I feel calm, and that scares me because I forgot what calm felt like." She swallowed. "Mark used to say calm meant boring." That was the first time his name slipped between us. It landed heavy. "I'm not the same person I was then," she said. "I don't want to disappear again." I reached over without thinking and brushed a strand of hair from her face. My hand stayed there a second too long. She didn't pull away. That's when I knew we were already deeper than I planned. We started back toward the parking lot with the mountains behind us and the valley opening wide in front. The walk felt slower now. Heavier. Like something important had been said, even if we hadn't said everything. Halfway down the trail, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it at first. Then it buzzed again, sharp and insistent. I pulled it out and felt my stomach drop. "Mark." Lena saw my face change. "What is it?" she asked. "It's Mark," I said quietly. The phone kept ringing in my hand like it was asking me to choose something right there. I let it ring until it stopped. I didn't know what I could say with her standing beside me. Lena didn't push. She just nodded once. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. "I know," I replied, even though my chest still felt tight. At her car, she turned to face me. "I don't want secrets," she said. "I've lived with silence before. I can't do that again." "No secrets," I said, "I promise." She squeezed my hand, then drove off. I sat in my truck for a long minute, staring straight ahead, trying to settle my thoughts. Mark texted a few minutes later, "Call me back now." I drove home on autopilot. The familiar roads, the mountains fading in the mirrors. At my apartment, I paced before finally calling him. He answered right away. "So you ignored me," he said. "I was busy," I said. "With my ex-wife?" he shot back. "Someone had seen us. Of course they had. Boulder is small like that. I didn't plan it," I said. "It was a blind date." "And you stayed," he said, colder now. "Yes." There was a long pause. Then he said, "Meet me tomorrow. I want to hear this to my face." I agreed. Hanging up felt like closing a door I couldn't reopen. I texted Lena. "He knows." She replied right away, "Come over." Her place was warm and quiet. Books everywhere, small pieces of art. When she opened the door, she didn't fall apart. She just listened. "Are you sure you want all of this?" she asked. "I don't know what happens next," I said, "but I know how it feels when I'm with you." She nodded, and for the first time that night I saw hope. The next day dragged. My hands did the work they always did, but my head wasn't there. Every sound on the job site felt too loud. Every pause too long. By the time my shift ended, my nerves felt worn thin. The bar on Arapahoe hadn't changed much. Same dark wood. Same smell of old beer and fried food. Mark was already there, sitting in a booth like he'd been waiting longer than he said. He looked older, harder, like life had sanded down anything soft. "So," he said, leaning forward, "say it." I told him the truth. About the blind date, about not knowing, about staying anyway, about choosing to keep seeing her. His jaw tightened. "You think a connection makes this okay?" "I think two people get to choose each other," I said, "even when it's uncomfortable." He shook his head. "You have no idea what that divorce did to me." "I'm sorry," I said, "but I can't live my life around your pain." That's when he said it. If I kept seeing her, he was done with me. No pretending, no staying friends. The loss hit before I even left the booth. "I'm not backing down," I said. He stood up fast, threw cash on the table, and walked out without looking back. I drove straight to Lena's after that. My hands shook on the wheel. When she opened the door and saw my face, she pulled me inside without questions. "He cut me off," I said. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "I never wanted to take something from you." "You didn't," I said. "He chose it." Then there was a knock at the door. Sharp, heavy. "Lena," Mark's voice said, "open up." The room went still. Lena's fingers tightened around mine. I stepped in front of her without thinking, but she shook her head gently. "I need to handle this," she said. She opened the door. Mark stood there, anger sharp on his face. But Lena didn't fold. She didn't shrink. She spoke calmly, clearly. She told him the truth about the years she felt invisible, about rebuilding herself alone. When it was over, she told him to leave, and he did. When the door closed, Lena sat down hard. I sat beside her and held her hand while the shaking passed. "You were brave," I said. "I was terrified," she whispered. Those two usually travel together. She leaned into me, and for the first time, the quiet felt earned. After that night, things didn't suddenly become easy. They became honest. There was space where Mark used to be. Some days that space hurt. Other days it just existed, quiet and unresolved. I learned not to rush it. Loss has its own pace. Lena and I stopped moving, like we were doing something wrong. We went back to the café on Pearl Street and sat by the same window. We walked along Boulder Creek in the evenings. We cooked dinners that didn't always turn out right and laughed when they didn't. We built small routines that felt steady, not flashy. One Saturday morning, I showed up at the community center where Lena ran an art class. Kids crowded the tables, fingers stained with paint, papers spread everywhere. Lena stood in front of them, calm and sure, like she had finally found a place that fit her. When she saw me, her whole face changed. "You came," she said. "I said I would," I replied. Later, I fixed a loose shelf in the supply room. Not because she needed saving, just because building things is how I show care. She let me help without making it mean more than it was. That night, we sat on my small balcony as the sun dropped behind the mountains. She sketched quietly. I watched. The silence felt full. "My place used to feel like a stop on the way to nowhere," I said. She looked up. "And now? Now it feels like somewhere I want to come back to." She reached for my hand and held it like it belonged there. A little later, my phone buzzed. A message from Mark. Not angry, just tired. An apology for showing up the way he did. Nothing resolved, but something loosened. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. My life wasn't about fixing old chapters anymore. It was about building something true, one day at a time. Lena leaned her head against my shoulder. "So," she said softly, "we're really doing this?" "Yeah," I said, "and we are." The quiet settled around us, warm and steady. And for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel lonely. If this story lingered with you, stay a while. There's always another truth waiting just beyond the porch.